Why is there this whole air of negativity around electric vehicles? After 15 years, will you actually be able to use an EQS? EVs are not all that cheap.
Correct.
Nexon diesel sells, they sell dhaba dhab. This podcast should have been titled that we are adding to your EV confusion. And that's why you have us and tell you that the reason why there are discounts is because... Welcome to the Evo India podcast, where today we are talking about the problem with electric vehicles.
One sec, Suresh. Is there a problem with electric vehicles?
Not exactly, you're right. EVs don't really have a problem because if you look at the numbers, EV numbers are growing. If you look at the sheer volume, every second new car we are testing is an electric car.
Facts.
We are not even talking about electric two-wheelers or three-wheelers or buses and all of that. Just cars, right? There are more electric cars coming. More people are buying electric cars. So then why is there this whole air of negativity around electric vehicles? Why are there so many discounts on electric vehicles? And why are manufacturers trying to introduce new ideas and concepts to this whole ownership experience of an EV to try and make it more affordable, more attractive to a potential electric car buyer?
Correct. I think the reason we thought of this podcast in the first place is what MG is doing with their BaaS, Battery as a Service, where in the Windsor, which they just launched, the battery is not going to be sold to you as part of the car. When you take out a loan for the vehicle, you can take out a loan separately for the battery and you will be charged basis the usage of the battery. It's a very interesting program and it's not compulsory. You can still buy the car outright, though prices for that are not out at the time of recording this podcast. But yeah, it's a very interesting service. And the first thing that went off in my head was, why is MG doing this? Is the reason to keep the initial price of, or the ex-showroom price, the headline price of the car down? They've priced it as starting as 9.99 or some under 10 lakhs.
10 lakhs.
Yeah.
So that is, and I said that when we first saw the unveil of the Windsor EV, I said that is a proper disruptor move.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to lead this podcast with. First, let's introduce ourselves. I am Suresh Chandran.
Atish Mishra, Assistant Editor at Evo India.
So we are talking about EVs. We're going to start off with the Windsor EV, the battery as a service model. Now, when we put out that video, we had a lot of queries and nobody could really understand what that meant. And truth of the matter is that even I couldn't really understand that. What we were told was that you pay as you go. Yeah. So you buy the car, okay? So that is one part of it. You can either buy it on EMIs or you can buy it flat. Then you buy the battery, which is on an EMI. Yeah. Now, according to regulation, they also have to give you the option of buying everything together, the car plus the battery. So those prices will come out. Now, the cost is $3.50 per kilometer,
yes,
which is very low.
But with a star on top.
With a star on top. And the catch here is that you have to go through a finance company. Now, I've got notes here because there's a lot to pack up in this
We've got lots
episode.
of notes today. We've done our research.
So, Bajaj and Hero, Bajaj Finance and Hero Finance, they will charge you for a minimum of 1,500 kilometers per month, irrespective. You use it for 2 kilometers, you're on a holiday in Europe, you're not use the car at all, you still have to pay for 1,500 kilometers.
So how much does that amount to?
So that works out to 5,250 rupees a month.
Okay.
I'm assuming plus GST on top of that. So regardless of distance covered, 5,250. There are other finance companies that you can opt for. Now, EcoFi, they will charge a minimum for 1,500 kilometers at 5.8 rupees a kilometer. But the USP there is paperless real-time loan approval. Okay, now what if you exceed 1,500 kilometers?
Yeah.
Now, Hero will charge you 3.5 rupees per kilometer for whatever excess is there. How do they monitor it? I don't know.
You will take a picture of your odometer and send it to them at the end of the month.
Like a Uber driver or a Rev driver, like one of those rental cab drivers, you send a picture. Or maybe everything is connected. So maybe all your data is going to a central server and that sounds monitoring.
That sounds more likely also.
Which is also, to me, a bit scary. If you're having a lot of fun with your car, they know what you're doing with your car. And I don't know, this whole gray area of what happens to your data. Suppose somebody wants to see your data, there is a court order for your data. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, that's a topic for another discussion with an expert on data and privacy and all of that jazz, but that's a separate thing. So if you exceed 3.5 rupees a kilometer by Hero.
Correct.
Bajaj and Ecofy, they will charge you for the next 1500 kilometers. Even if you do 1501 kilometers, you pay for that whole block of 1500 kilometers. So another 5250.
So if you're nearing the end of the month and you're at 1499, you park your car and start using Uber for the next 3 days.
Then there is another company called Vidyut Tech, which charges based on actual usage, but the trade-off might be a higher interest rate on that loan, because this is EMI basis, so this is a car loan, so you're actually paying for that, right? Interest on that. Now, the range of the Windsor, 331 kilometers, that's what MG quotes. They have not quoted a certified ARAI range, so maybe 250 kilometers of real-world range.
I think we need to do a proper range test of it when we come to Pune, and we'll be able to ascertain the true range of Windsor.
And the charging costs. Now, EVs, they are ridiculously cheap to run.
Yeah.
And MG has a lot of real benefits to owners. So this is now for a first-time owner. Not for, if you buy a second-hand Windsor, you're not applicable for all this. But for a first-time owner, they're giving free charging via their app. And their app has got all these charging points aggregated on it. So that's a cool thing. And that is for the first year if you book it before 31st of December.
Okay.
Now, as a first-time buyer, you also get a lifetime warranty on the battery.
Okay.
So that's a good thing. And you get assured buyback of up to 60% after 3 years.
After 3 years or in 3 years?
Within 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, within 3 years. We haven't written our notes properly here, but within 3 years.
Yeah, because after 3 years is a very sweet deal. Within 3 years is
within
more
3 years. And all this, again, has another star, and that is that you have to buy an MG service contract, which costs approximately $30,000 for 3 years.
So there's a lot of stars.
There are a lot of stars, but net,
Yeah.
this actually is a very good deal.
Correct.
Even if you do all this digging and trying to find out all the loopholes and everything, it still is a very good deal because your running costs are so much lower than an ICE.
And we did the maths actually. We've done all of the maths.
Yep. So if you're doing 10,000 kilometers.
Yeah, so there are a few assumptions here. One is you're doing 10,000 kilometers a month. That's just a round number to make calculations easier. Second assumption we've done is that the running cost of an equivalent petrol engine, we assumed something like a turbo petrol when you
10 kmpl.
10 kmpl. And
actually, turbo petrols won't even give you 10 kmpl.
No, but a mixed
you're
usage,
giving them an advantage.
10 kmpl is a fair, I think, assumption over there for a 1 liter turbo petrol.
So in 10,000 kilometers, you will spend 1,30,000. No, 1,03,000 kilometers. I have progressive glasses, so
and this
why
is
am I
also
struggling to read?
This is also assuming Maharashtra fuel prices.
103 rupees per liter.
Correct.
Okay, so now who is making a note? They should put commas with these figures.
True.
Anyway, I digress. An ICE SUV will cost you 1,03,000 kilometers in terms of running costs.
Yes.
Whereas a Windsor
fuel
EV...
costs, not running
Fuel
costs.
Fuel costs. Yeah, this does not include service because
fuel
now
costs.
With your ICE, you will also have to do oil change and all of that jazz. A Windsor running on public charging. Public charging assuming 20 rupees.
Yeah, so that's a little more expensive than what would
Home
normally
charging.
happen, but pure public charging.
Pure public charging, a Windsor EV will cost you $30,400.
In terms of charging costs.
Charging cost.
And then your battery rental on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're opting for that 30,000 rupees MG service thing, this actually is immaterial because it's free.
Correct.
Right?
True. For the first year.
For the first year.
Yeah.
But if you're charging at home, which is what I assume every EV owner would be doing, and if you're not going to be charging at home, I really wouldn't recommend you buy an EV in the first place because then you'll be going through all the janjat of finding a charger, leaving your car there, going and finding a coffee while your car charges. And that's like, if you have so much free time, you should probably be doing something else in life. Anyway, I digress again. So a Windsor EV running on your home charger, which is around 7 rupees a unit, that will cost you 10,640 rupees.
But Sirish, you're forgetting one thing. You have to rent the battery.
Yeah, so we've got that figure also. Now, when you're adding up the rental cost of the battery, now we're talking about 10,000 kilometers, right?
Yeah, so when you look at it as 5,200 whatever per 1,500 kilometers and you multiply it by 12 months.
That is 63,000 over a year that you're paying on battery rental, which works out to a 9,600 rupee saving if you're using public charging.
Correct. So you add the public charging figure, which was how much? 30...
Whatever.
Yeah.
So basically you're saving 9,600 rupees with public charging.
Yeah.
And if you're using home charging,
which is the
saving
which most people will be doing.
Yep. You're saving 29,360 rupees.
Correct. So when you're renting the battery, the delta between savings, the delta in savings between petrol and EVs is not as high if you are buying the battery outright.
So, honestly speaking, all this jazz, but you're saving 29,000 rupees when you're using home charging. Which, okay, when you look at it as 3.5 rupees per kilometer, which sounds really cool. But when you add up, do division, do multiplication, have somebody sitting in office for 3 hours doing something, it's 29,360. That's it that you're saving. Unless you use that MG app and go to a public charger and avail of the free charging.
Correct.
For the
but
first
that'll
year.
only be for the first year.
For the first year.
But see, you need to remember that you've not paid for the battery. And at some point, you're going to have to pay for the battery. And that has been done by adding it into your running costs.
Yeah, so it is cheaper in terms of your monthly outgoes, but eventually you do end up paying for it.
But it's not cheaper in terms of your monthly outgoes because your monthly outgoes will include your rent of the battery, your running cost, all of that. So effectively, net, it evens out.
So what's the benefit of the Windsor EV?
Space. That's what they're selling.
So basically, all this is compared to a regular compact SUV, but with the Windsor EV, you're getting the space of a Creta at compact SUV prices.
Initial prices.
And
then
so,
the rest of your thing is spread out over the running costs. Yeah.
Yep. So actually in this, it's really crucial to know what is the actual cost of the Windsor EV. The total cost.
Yeah.
Like if you want to buy the fully spec'd Windsor with those fancy quilted seats and everything loaded onto it, because that 10 lakh rupee starting price is for the base version.
Yeah.
Now, what is on the base version also, we don't know. Or what is not there. What is not there, we don't know. But the top end version, which actually compares with the Creta in terms of all the features and specs and all of that, that is something that we really need to compare and see how this works. So EVs are not all that cheap.
Correct.
Right?
And is that the problem? Is that why people are not buying EVs? We were speaking to Santosh Iyer, who's the MD and CEO of Mercedes-Benz India. And he has some really interesting thoughts on EVs because he's right in the thick of it. He's launched a bunch of EVs in the last year. He has to deal with the government on a lot of policy. He's obviously dealing with customers every single day with their dealers. And he's got his pulse obviously on the market. He says that where there are subsidies, where the cost of EVs can be brought down, EV sales automatically go up. And as soon as the subsidies are taken away, EV sales go down. It's an inverse graph. And that exists throughout the world. It's existed in Europe. He's seen those trends there. And he's seen those trends in India as well. So there is a relationship between cost of EVs and the sales of EVs. And maybe MG is trying to sort of be a little smart here and hide the cost of owning an EV.
I don't think hide. It's not fair to say they're hiding the cost, but they're trying to create an interesting package. Now, battery as a service is a service that nobody really has attempted before in India. So I give them marks for thinking out of the box. Thinking as a disruptor, and they have to disrupt.
Correct.
Otherwise, nobody's going to buy their cars, right? So they have to do something innovative, and I give them full credit for being innovative. But obviously, if you are buying an EV or if you're in the market for a Windsor EV, I suggest you also do your own calculations. If you're doing maybe less than 1,000 kilometers a month, does it make sense? If you're doing exactly 1,500 kilometers in a month, then does it make sense? So you really need to plan that out. Also remember 331 kilometers of range, that's what is claimed. So real world maybe 250 kilometers. So is that enough for you? So is the Windsor going to be your city drive car? And then when you want to drive from Mumbai to Goa on your holiday, or from Delhi, wherever outside you go to the hills, then you have another car in the family for that. So that comparison you have to do. So like you rightly said, maybe the reason why people aren't so excited about EVs is that compared to a regular petrol car, it's not that much in terms of savings. And we haven't even spoken about diesel cars. Now, this cost comparison is for petrol. Now, if you take a Venue diesel or you take a Nexon diesel, Nexon diesel sells, they sell dhaba dhab. If you take a CNG car, a CNG Brezza, then what is the comparison like?
Correct. We've not done that maths yet.
Now some poor guy in the office is going to be sitting and doing that comparison. We'll have that on the Evo India website, so check that out.
Yes.
Somebody is going to get hurt. So when you compare with the diesel or with the CNG, then again the equation might go the other way. So then what are you saving on? So again, you have to make a decision because you are the ultimate
but again,
buyer.
I think what the delta then is not in terms of pure cash, but it's in terms of the space you're offered, the large screens you're offered, the tech you're offered. You need to understand that the Windsor is a very, I wouldn't say high end, but high end compared to the 9-10 lakh rupee package.
100%.
You know,
that size of the center screen is so big that even though the digital cluster is some 8.5 or 9 inches, that looks tiny because
and you put a
your
laptop
center
next
screen
to it and it dwarfs a laptop.
Exactly.
You know? So the package in terms of spec that they're offering is a very, I mean, it's fairly well loaded, and the space on offer is a lot. The comfort on offer is definitely a lot. So those can't be discounted from the value proposition.
True.
Of the Windsor.
And the Windsor is just a start. They're going to launch cars now because MG were constrained by what they could invest in India to grow their business. Now with the JSW MG alliance, now they've got the cash, they've got the approvals, they've got the wherewithal. So we're going to see a lot of cars coming out of that. MG setting up a premium dealership network also.
That's very interesting.
So that's MG's version of Nexon.
And I think they're teasing the Cyberster with that. So maybe we'll see a sports car electric.
Yep, an electric sports car. And what do we know about MGs? MGs are known for the small, little, nice sports cars, right?
Yeah.
The Cyberster is probably the modern
closest
equivalent
to it.
To what MG used to be.
Absolutely.
And that's a proper MG. Unlike these cars, which are Woolings, which are rebadged MG in India. No hiding the fact, it's the Wooling Cloud.
Yeah.
So, which is now the MG.
Just like the
Comet.
Yeah.
Exactly like the Comet. Or even the Hector for that matter.
Correct.
Right? So, that's again, it's all there. Yeah. And they're saying that they're not going to do only EVs. They're also going to do hybrids.
Yeah.
And
FEVs.
Not just regular hybrids that we know in India, but plug-in hybrids.
And that's going to be very interesting because nobody's seriously gone into the FEV space in India. You know, it exists in the upper ends of the luxury market. Urus FEV, XC90 FEV, all of that stuff. 296 FEV. But I mean,
but that is irrelevant.
Yes, I mean,
right?
They're
totally irrelevant to what we're talking about on this podcast.
Correct.
But quickly, we'll just touch upon hybrids. Now, there is a lot of talk about hybrids also getting incentivized in terms of GST. There are two thoughts to it. The first is that now when the government 3 years, 5 years back, insisted on the Indian automotive industry moving towards electrification, you know, and they gave like hard targets and made those bulldozing statements. You know, that's when Tata Motors, Mahindra, they invested, like really invested in the whole EV space.
And we've seen the fruits of that investment today with the modern cars.
Not yet with Mahindra.
Yeah.
Their whole born electric range is now going to come on stream.
Absolutely.
So all that money, all that investment of time, manpower, everything at the expense of combustion engines.
Of
you know,
course,
because you have to put your resources into one place. Not that Mahindra makes bad combustion engines.
Yeah,
I
in
have
fact,
to say
they've been ahead of the curve.
Excellent combustion engines. But they haven't...
There's a pun over there.
ahead of the curve, if you didn't catch that. So, you know, but now they've invested everything in electrics. And now, if you say, okay, chalo, hybrid ko bhi incentive.
Yes.
What does that mean for these guys?
I'm sure it's a difficult time for them. I mean, everyone's confused. It just throws everything up in the air.
Yeah.
You know, as to now is the government gonna incentivize something else, and has everything gone to waste?
Yep.
Because to be fair, from a customer perspective, hybrids are a great option.
I love hybrids.
Yeah.
You know, I honestly love hybrids. You get silence.
Correct.
Okay, very smooth, very refined. Petrol engines, obviously, right? So very refined, very smooth. You have range. You don't have range anxiety. You know, all of that is there. Lower emissions because in city, your pollution is when you're idling in traffic and all that rubbish. No, our cities are so congested. 5 kilometers takes you, 1 hour? So basically, you're sitting and idling and spewing out smoke.
Yeah.
Whereas while idling, more often than not, they have switched off their engines.
Yeah, and they're just running on batteries.
So that is very good for the environment. Less CO2 emissions.
I'm running the Camry hybrid. I absolutely Love it.
Lap of luxury.
It's really nice. You drive it with a light throttle. Okay, if you're gunning it, the engine comes on. You run it with a light throttle. It's running on EV mode so much. Like
60% of the time. That's what Toyota's research says. 60% of the time in regular Indian driving conditions, it is on pure EV mode.
Phenomenal.
So, it's excellent. Hybrids, I am all for it. And if you ask me, I say yes, hybrids should get GST incentives and 100%. Everybody should be able to afford a hybrid. And that offsets the cost of that additional hybrid masala that you put on the car. But think of it this way, that policy needs to be consistent.
Yes.
And you need to give like a time frame. So, chalo, if government wants to give hybrid incentives, the only right thing to do would be to say after 2 years or after 3 years, so that you give all the other guys who've invested so much in the electric mobility space the time to hybridize their existing combustion engines. It's not like they don't have combustion engines, but hybridizing a combustion engine is not like you buy an electric motor, you slap it on top.
Plug and play thing.
Not going to happen. The amount of testing that modern engines have to go through, especially with emission compliance, is enormous. Like really enormous. When we moved to BS6, that time all the testing agencies were so backed up because all of these engines had to be tested,
and then
compliance.
You got your CAFE norms and this and that.
So it's not going to be easy. So this is a topic that really needs a lot of thought. And I think our policymakers are also cognizant of that fact. And that's why they haven't said anything about whether hybrids will be incentivized or not. Only problem is that state governments can do what they think is in their best interest. So recently we had the UP government giving incentives for hybrids, and that's dropped prices of the Innova, the High Cross, of the Grand Vitara. So that's become very attractive. So that is worrying. If other states follow suit, then what happens? It's great for the consumer. I'm not saying no. If I was in the market, I would be balle balle. So that's true. But the industry, this does not, and then it doesn't send out a right message, does it? In terms of that, and that's what Santosh also said. We got an interview with Santosh that is going to come out on the channel where he talks about that policy needs to be really well thought out and it needs to be consistent. So that then you can plan long term.
Correct. So hybrids net, they're good and they would be an ideal stepping stone, but with the steps our government has taken in terms of like pushing EV so hard, maybe that should be now followed through consistently. But I think government policy aside, we also need to consider the market. Does the market want EVs? Are they ready for EVs? We've heard reports from Europe of EV sales tanking, EV sales have dropped, European car manufacturers are revising.
So we have figures. Okay. Sales of fully electric cars slumped 43.9% in August, falling for the fourth consecutive month as the EU bloc's biggest EV markets, Germany and France, recorded drops of 68 and 33% respectively.
That's a big number. That's not a small drop. It's not 5%, 7%, 10%.
And that's the reason why every second day you see a news report of a manufacturer who went full gung-ho on EV saying, boss, EV is not happening. We're not going to go full EV by 2025 or 2030, and we are going to do combustion engines.
And that's why in that interview, you'll also catch Santosh saying, as things stand today, he's very cognizant that things are very possibly changing. So
we are in the state of flux. That what is going to happen is that big question. But if you look at the numbers in India, and we've got that somewhere in these 500 pages that the team have printed out for me, in calendar year 2023, sales of EVs went up 49%.
Correct.
In calendar year 2022, how much did they go up by?
Some 200%.
209%. So it is growing, and it's not on such a small base anymore. In calendar year 2022, we sold 10.25 lakh EVs. In 2023, 15.26 lakh EVs. So it is growing.
Correct. But I think India is still behind the European curve. So the Indian curve is chasing the European curve. It is growing, but will it flatline? Will it dip? That's something that's yet to be seen.
So do buyers need EVs? If you ask me, we've been long-term testing so many electric cars.
Yes.
Right? I think an EV, especially for city commuting, is excellent. Now, a lot of houses have got more than one car.
Correct.
It's a fact. If you have one covered parking, you can put your EV charger and no problem, right? You put your wall box charger, you are sorted. And I think your second car, being an EV, is excellent. I know a lot of people who've got one big car, but their daily runabout is like a Nexon EV, which is excellent. And now you have the Punch EV and all of that. So it's simple, very cheap to run, no headache, tried and tested. It's not like it's flawless. And I have to be clear about that. These friends of mine who've got EVs also complain about this problem, that problem.
100%.
So it's not flawless, and that is a problem. But all said and done, an EV, you don't think about, oh shit, we have to send it to the petrol pump again, another $5,000 of fuel, and there's nothing. It's so cheap, and you plug it in at home, and there's no range anxiety, nothing. So EVs as a second car is great. And if you're not going to be doing long road trips, or if you're doing, say, Bombay, Goa once a year, stop in Kolhapur and charge and carry on. You're fine.
True.
Sorted.
But look, on the ground, in the real world, there are very real challenges. And you said we run a lot of EVs as our long-termers, and I've experienced challenges. I've turned up on a Bombay Goa run, I've turned up to a charger which is not plugged into any car, but the app which is connected to that charger says it's plugged into a Nexon EV. A ghost Nexon EV, and it obviously wouldn't let me charge my car because of that. And then it was a 15-20 minute exercise of calling them, saying, hey, there's no one here. And they're arguing with me, saying, no, there's a Nexon EV charging, we can't do anything. I'm like, there's no Nexon EV here, So there are very real charges. I was in Pune, in the heart of the city, at the Aero Mall, trying to charge, and that damn charger wouldn't start. So it was me and another car, two of us with two guns, trying to figure out how we can charge these two cars, and we were just...
And you ended up shooting each other.
We didn't end up shooting. I was actually feeling really bad because they had plugged in to a charger, and I requested if they could disconnect because the other cable wasn't reaching my charging socket, which was on the other side of the car. So I asked them to move their car, I plotted in there, and then none of the cars would charge.
So you screwed that poor
Basically,
guy over.
yeah. So for 30 minutes, and we were sitting scratching our heads wondering how to make this car charge.
But see, your use case is not a real world use case, because if you were to buy a Nexon EV, you would put a charger at your home.
But there was somebody beside me
Yeah.
who was driving through Pune
So then
and was stuck.
Yeah.
So there are very real on-ground challenges.
So again, like I said, you have to decide whether you need an EV.
Yeah.
You have to decide what you want an EV for. If you want to save money, an EV, well, this is the time to buy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about prices, okay? This is the time to buy,
Absolutely.
boss. Nexon EV prices down by 3 lakh rupees.
3
3
lakhs.
lakh rupees is no laughing matter for a car that costs around 18 lakh rupees.
Yeah. And we were wondering, why is this happening? And Tata Motors' word is that they want to bring it on par with an ICE Nexon. They want to allow more customers to experience the joys of owning an EV, the technology, this, that, and the other.
And that's why you have us to cut through all of that.
Yes.
And tell you that the reason why there are discounts is because dealers have got a lot of stock. There's a lot of stock that is piled up. They want to clear it over the next 2 months,
And they're
leading up to
pushing in the
Diwali, and they're
festive
pushing
season.
it.
Yeah.
What I also hear is that they're cut out all their margin on the Nexon EV.
Wow,
So they're
okay.
selling it at cost. I hope they're selling it at cost for the sake of their shareholders and not at a loss, but we are not privy to that much information.
Yes.
So for a 19.2 lakh 9 rupee car, okay, so say 20 lakh rupee car, you're saving 3 lakh rupees.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of in terms
and
of
then
percentage
your running
value.
cost is also cheap.
Yeah, and here you don't rent the battery, you buy the full car yourself.
Correct.
Plus the Nexon, nice looking car, nice to drive, very reliable. No, wait. I just now said that there are problems. But I think the new Nexon has sorted out most of those problems, because I haven't heard any issues with new Nexon owners.
And
apart from screens glitching.
correct, the issues are not with the battery tech. It's more with the gadgetry around the car that they fitted in. So
Well, if a car doesn't start or doesn't move and has to be flat-bedded, that is a problem with the battery tech also. But I haven't heard of new Nexons having that, the facelifted Nexons having the problem. So I think all that is in the past. So nice looking car, 3 lakh rupees off. No,
good deal.
great. Even the Comet, we have those figures also somewhere out here. The Comet prices have also gone down. So from when it was launched at between 10 and 15 lakhs. And that's when we said that, man, these prices are crazy.
And we were really excited about the Comet because we thought it could change the game in the small EV segment.
Yeah, but we said these prices are crazy.
Yeah.
And
Today
obviously
prices
they
have
were
dropped.
crazy.
Yeah.
So the prices had to be reduced. Today, it's 6.9 lakhs to 9.53 lakhs.
And this is with important updates. Now it can be fast charged. So
Yes.
they've upgraded the car and they've cut prices. So the package of the Comet today is so much better than what the initial Comet price was.
Which makes a lot of sense. And as a nice city runabout, the Comet is very good.
It's lovely. If you do 20 kilometers across Pune, if I had to choose a car, I would choose the Comet.
Yeah.
Because
costs nothing to run, next to nothing to run.
Forget cost, you can squeeze it in those gaps those rickshaws make, and that's the best thing.
Yeah. That way, even a Jimny goes into gaps that a rickshaw makes. So that's also well, and the Jimny's got 5 doors, which brings me to the issue with the Comet. There's only one issue with the Comet, and that is, as a second car in the family, it's invariably the driver who's dropping the kids to school, doing all those runs, picking you up from here, taking you there where there's no parking. That's why a driver is so important and so necessary in our city. Now, with a 2-door or a 3-door car, where are you going to sit? Okay, maybe you can sit next to the driver, but will the lady of the house sit on the front seat next to the driver?
And for this, I tell you to go to our Evo India page and find the reel where we packed 4 people and all their luggage from the airport in a Comet and drove back to the office.
Okay, so hopefully the team will put a link to that Instagram reel somewhere, or maybe put it up on YouTube Shorts.
Yeah, we should actually do that,
But, you can't, every day you're not going to climb in at the back, right?
True.
You're going...
No, 2 doors is definitely a limitation.
So that is the limitation. If the Comet was re-engineered for India with 5 doors, I think it would be great.
Yeah, true.
And I think it's also not a bad looker. It actually is interesting to look at.
It's very futuristic looking,
which is
tiny compact box with nice DRLs and everything.
Which is enough. I think I see no problem in the way I don't like the Hector styling, but again, personal opinion. It's not like my face is a joy for a lot of people, but I think the Comet is okay, and EVs need to look futuristic. Which I would go on another rant on why combustion engine cars should not have that full width LED lights, and that should be reserved only for EVs, and that's a differentiator. But I won't go on that rant. So that's on the prices of EVs. Prices being slashed. Obvious reason. There could be 2 reasons. One, customer demand has gone down. Maybe not looking at the figures, or manufacturers had overestimated what customer demand would be. And I think it is the second that is more to do with all these price cuts than the first.
Could be. It could be the reason for discounts. But I think what's also happened is the guys who initially wanted to buy EVs have all bought their EVs.
Those fence sitters are not jumping the fence.
The fence sitters are maybe on the fence. Oh, some of them are jumping the fence. Some of them are jumping back on the right, not the right side, but the ice side. And I think now we're seeing the phase where the manufacturers really need to market well, sell EVs for their stronger selling points, and this is the critical juncture where we see whether the curve continues to rise or flatten out.
So I'll tell you from my experience, the problem with discounts is that this affects residual values.
100%. And EV residual values are already such a big question mark.
And then now when you have discounts, that means if you own a Nexon EV, okay, your value of your car has gone down even more.
Correct.
It's not going to come back up.
Sadly.
Okay, unless there was like a COVID time thing where then demand went through the roof and second-hand values also went up. That's a once-in-a-generation occurrence.
So manufacturers are doing things to address this. Mercedes has their assured buyback, which is about 60% of the value of the car, and which is on par with their ICE counterparts. So like a EQE's buyback is equivalent to a GLE's buyback and stuff like that. The Windsor,
kind of equivalent. Huh?
Yeah.
I would say 70% would be for ICE and 60% for EV, but okay.
So in the region, in the ballpark, again with stars in 3 years so much, in 4 years so much, in 5 years so much.
And you have to opt for the Star Agility program.
So there's a buy-in for that package and all of that. Similarly for Windsor. Windsor's also done a 60%, what you were talking about. I don't know other manufacturers who are doing that, but I'm sure everybody's trying to come up with schemes for this, because I know this is a critical sore point for buyers.
The thing is that people are coming up with these schemes because of the residual value implication. And Indians are very cost conscious. Now you're starting to get a critical car park of used electric vehicles.
Yes.
And now the worry is that you buy an EV today, and after 3 years when you want to upgrade to a next EV, how much will you get back from this car? And I think that's a big reason for the slowdown in interest.
Yes.
I don't think this is actually reflected, because there was a survey done by Park Plus, which says 51% of electric vehicle owners have considered switching back to ICE. Now, obviously, they must have used it, they would have liked it, they would have not liked it. It's the same. You would buy a Maruti today, and after 3 years, you've gone to a Hyundai. Okay?
Yeah, fair.
So, I don't think this is that reflective, and this is just headline making news, and it's not really reflective of ground realities.
And I don't think India is there yet. Look at when our EV started coming in. When did the Nexon EV launch? It was 2019, I think. Okay, 5 years since then, but that was the first car. It's today that we have options. Today that we have a sort of density in the market. It's not critical density, I would say. We're not flooded with EVs, but there is a fair choice. And say 3 or 4 years from now is when we will actually be seeing if people are switching back to ICE or not.
What could be a problem is that today there's a breakthrough in battery technology, which is then rolled out in a year. Then all your current battery electric vehicles become
obsolete.
Maybe not obsolete, but it's not future forward. And EVs are future forward.
And I'm gonna again draw on something that Santosh said, because when you talk to him, you learn so much. He's such an interesting person. He has so much to share. He said that maybe this initial stuff may be happening, but 15 years from now, your electric car has intrinsically more value than an ICE car, because the battery components are intrinsically valuable and they can be recycled. Something like lithium can be extracted from your battery and recycled, reused, put into a new car.
And that is after you consider your second use, third use of the batteries.
Yeah. So intrinsic value of those cars exist. Maybe it's just that this 3-year cycle, 4-year cycle where we look to resell and upgrade, that curve is dipping below what an ICE would dip.
But I'm going to push back against that and say that a combustion vehicle is not junk.
Maybe
after
not.
15 years.
Yeah.
Because a combustion vehicle, you don't have to throw it after 15 years.
Yeah, true.
Unless the government mandates scrappage and what's happening in Delhi.
Yeah.
But those cars from Delhi are going to Meerut, to Karnal, to Nagpur, to other places where this rule is not applicable. So, do we throw away anything in India?
We don't.
But old cars are still running. Our Gone But Not Forgotten series, it relies on us finding old cars that are loved.
But you look at the value of a 15-year-old 7 Series, a 10-year-old 7 Series, it's nothing compared to the original price of the car.
So we don't know what the value of a 15-year-old EQS is going to be.
And what the cost of lithium 15 years from now is going to be.
And also what the battery state is going to be. So, after 15 years, will you actually be able to use an EQS? Is a question mark, which we don't know. Yeah. Nobody really knows. But after 15 years, you can use your S-Class.
True.
And there will be buyers lined up for it.
As long as you've kept it in good nip and it's running. And
yeah, but even if it's in shit condition, there'll be somebody, because then shit condition means you won't get a great price for it, but there'll be some Enthu cutlet who will be ready to buy it and work on it, and that's a project car. So combustion engines can be a project car.
Yeah.
Because you can do stuff to it.
True. Fair point.
With an EV, what are you going to do? So
it can be your school machine 3-4 kilometers around the house in ultra luxury.
But see, these are the unknowns, and that I get it. That these unknowns, people like 20 lakh rupees is no joke. Everybody's hard-earned money. You spend it wisely.
Yeah.
Today, you're spending for features and safety and all that, but you're spending wisely. You're spending for something, and
you're looking for value.
And afterwards, and somebody who's buying a second-hand EV, they will also be looking for a reason to buy it.
True.
So these are all questions, which
with no answers.
Not that many answers to.
Yeah. So we're not answering too many questions on this podcast. We're asking more of them.
We are actually adding to your confusion.
Yes.
So apologies for this. I don't know what we started off thinking, but
EV is the problem. Let's get back to that question.
Yeah. So
what is the problem with EVs?
So I don't think, to be clear, there is really no problem, because the only real issue right now is that manufacturers have probably overestimated demand for EVs. Customers said that not now, hold on, we will. Okay, but eventually we'll be forced to. Legislation is going to force us to buy EVs. Okay, right now, hang on. Okay, we got a combustion vehicle, or we've already bought an EV. We'll wait and see. And I think in the whole holistic picture, that is the issue. And with every trend, there is a rise, then there's a trough, and then there is again a rise, and then that rise becomes steady. We are right now in a trough, and eventually we will get out of this, and I don't think it's going to take much time. Once this thing is cleaned up, okay. And the other thing which Santosh said again, okay. Thank you, Santosh, for doing that interview with us.
Yes.
He said that today, like 5 or 10% of the entire dealer network in the country are selling EVs.
Yeah.
Maruti doesn't have an EV.
True.
Okay. Hyundai has the Ioniq 5.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't have like a mass market EV. The Creta EV is going to come end of the year or early next year. You know, Kia does not have an EV apart from the EV6
again.
Yeah. So once the mass players, Toyota, once they come into the picture with their EVs, that's when we will see that inflection point.
Yeah. That's when the conversation around EVs will probably have more confidence behind them. Today, I think that confidence is lacking because, again, it's so sparse in the market. Like what Santosh said, not everybody's talking about it. And what he said was most dealers, like a Maruti dealer, will try to push you away from an EV because they've got the Grand Vitara to sell, which is a hybrid.
Which is why you have to be clear also that there are people who have their agendas and who are pushing conversation in a certain angle.
True.
People who've got more muscle, people who've got more pull, who've got whatever, I wouldn't say credibility, but they would obviously want to push their agenda. Everybody is here to make a profit.
Everybody has an agenda.
Everybody has an agenda.
Yeah.
So they would not say great things about an EV. And eventually some people would amplify that message.
Yeah.
And then that just takes, it has its own never-ending cycle.
Snowball.
Yeah, it just becomes from 2 pieces of whatever chicken, you get a full biryani. So that's what's happening also.
Yes, true.
Right? But once they also have EVs, then all the conversation will move to a positive spin.
Yes.
And then that will give confidence to buyers. The sentiment will change. Okay, I'm not saying sentiment is very bad right now. Okay, but the sentiment will become more positive, and that's where you will start seeing more and more adoption of EVs.
Okay, I wanna detract to something that we've not even discussed and is completely out of our notes also.
Oh, so I'm not going to look at the notes.
No, don't need to look at the notes. What happens to performance car enthusiasts? What happens to us?
Okay, so I drove the Audi RS e-tron GT Performance. Very long name.
Yes.
Okay. And that performance is staggering. It already does 0 to 100 in some 2.7 seconds. Or
2.5, I think.
Now, with the performance, it does it in 2.5 seconds. Yeah. It makes 912 bhp with overboost, launch control, all of that. Okay. 912 bhp. So, coming back to your question, okay, what happens to us enthusiasts? There are 2 ways of looking at it. If you want the sound and the emotional experience, I'm sorry to say, but you're screwed. But if you just want performance, you're getting it. The Nexon, what was Tata Motors' biggest problem?
Engines.
It was they couldn't make good petrol engines. The diesel engine was fine. But the petrol engine, the Reverton engine, with all the will in the world, you can't say it's a great engine. It just does its job. It gives you decent everything. But it's just decent. Whereas with the EVs, they started making sub 10-second cars.
And like that.
Like that, yeah.
Out of the box.
Snap of the fingers.
Wheel spin as soon as you get it.
The first Nexon EV didn't even have traction control. So we got pictures of it smoking its tires, and it was an easy thing to do. Now it's got ESP and you can't switch it off and you can't do all that nonsense. But, you got performance right out of the box. The XUV 400. All that effort into combustion engines and turbocharging it and direct fuel injection and then sorting out the emissions and everything. Here with an EV, top up, you get performance. So if you are just a pure play performance addict, you will get performance and you will get effortless performance and you will get repeatable performance. Going back to the RS e-tron GT Performance, when we got the RS e-tron GT in India, I took it to a drag race. It was the second drag race I was competing it in my life. My reaction times were shit. And I finished second fastest in the event. 0.017 seconds slower than a massively tuned Ferrari 488. Okay.
If only you had got that 0.00 reaction time.
If my reaction time was, 0.017 seconds better, I would have won the drag race. The event. This is in a stock car, which I realized later on that, shit, I hadn't even checked the tire pressures. So that it's just box stock car. With the performance, okay, it'll probably take that 1000 bhp R8 to beat it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a regular supercar will get murdered by an EV.
Correct. But so many of us love that sound, love that emotion. We buy cars because we love to drive and the emotions they give us. And this is where I bring back the hybrid argument. And today, hybrid performance cars, low volumes, I mean, at that upper end of the car segment, anyway, they're low volume. But they may be the future, especially something like the Temerario V8 10,000 RPM hybrid. Revuelto, whatever, how many ever horsepower, 1,000 horsepower.
Look at Rimac. Rimac said they're not going to make another electric supercar.
Exactly.
Okay.
An electric company has pivoted.
Yes. Rimac owns Bugatti. And look at the new Bugatti, man.
Beautiful.
A V16, naturally aspirated.
When was the last time we even saw a V16?
Yeah, like I think a Cadillac concept car had a V16. I think we need Adil in the studio to tell us about that.
V16s.
What V16s were there. But a brand new engine.
Yeah.
Gordon Murray's cars.
All of them.
Man, the Red Bull hypercar.
Yeah, but those are not hybrids.
I'm just saying. No, those are like new. The electric car pioneers are pivoting towards ICE.
Yeah.
Okay, but see,
Anyway,
I
digress.
think for you and me, it's irrelevant because the CAFE norms.
15 years from now, I'll have to buy a depreciated hybrid 911. So,
if the government will sell you fuel,
that's another question.
think about that. Now, if fuel becomes really, really expensive, already it is taxed like you would not believe. Okay, but if fuel becomes really, really expensive, but then the counterpoint to that is today, if you put a EV charger at home, you get subsidized electricity.
That's also true.
Okay, when you're running, say, 10 air conditioners in your house, okay, and you're running your EV charger is like 7 rupees a unit.
A lot cheaper.
And the other, you pay like some 14 rupees a unit.
Yeah.
Now, if that EV electricity subsidy goes, and on the other side, if they start like taxing that as well, they'll see that, okay, less fuel is being sold, so tax revenue nahi aa raha hai. So where do you get tax revenue? So chalo, tax all these chargers.
Don't give them ideas, Suresh.
Then what happens? This podcast should have been titled that we are adding to your EV confusion. How to add more confusion to the mix. But it is true.
We're pouring whatever 10 liters of leftover fuel that's left in this country
into this fire.
onto the fire.
Yeah, but it is true.
Yeah.
Right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
if I'm wrong, please just put a comment.
See, it's not happening today, but at some point, the government will need to make revenue somewhere.
Yeah.
Fuel revenue is gone, they'll have to make revenue somewhere.
And talking about that revenue, again, another thing that Santosh said. Santosh, again, thank you for that interview. And now, on hindsight, definitely that interview will be there on the channel before this podcast goes up. So we'll put a link to that also in the description, and you can actually check it out on the channel, our interview with Santosh Iyer. So what he said was, the government is not dipping into their coffers to subsidize electric vehicles. Now, to understand that, you have to understand that GST is what, like some 46%, all the taxes. Okay. For CBUs, it is more and everything. But assume, 50%. Okay. Whereas 46%. And with the EV, it's 5%.
Yeah.
Okay. 5% because of the incentives and the subsidies. Now, not all states provide that incentive, but states that do provide that incentive, they actually do see a good volume of EV sales. So, the government is not dipping into their pockets to give you that subsidy. They're just reducing how much the taxes.
They're reducing how much they make.
Yes.
They're
reducing how much they
paying
make.
you to buy an EV.
Yep. Now with EVs being such a small proportion of overall car sales. Now what proportion? Again, we got our figures here. It's around 6-7%.
6% maybe.
Around 6-7%. In fact, it's 6.79.
This is for cars.
For cars, yeah. I see too many pages, man. I don't know which page that is.
I'll find.
But it's around between 6 to 7%. Okay.
You talk, I'll find.
So now you have that proportion is very small. So then what happens? The government is not dipping into their pocket. But tomorrow, if that proportion goes to say 15%, that means the government is losing tax revenue. That's when they'll be dipping into their pockets to really give you that subsidy.
Yeah. And that's the problem in Europe, which is what he pointed out. That in Europe, the tax is anyway low. It's 5% or 10% or something like that. And if they have to give a genuinely useful incentive, they have to take out money from their own pocket to give it to.
So here the subsidies are important because EVs are still at a nascent stage, and he was saying that that's why we need that subsidy to get EV sales moving, and then eventually we will then have more EVs.
I can't find those numbers.
Yeah, see, Adesh.
No, but it was 6%.
I'm not so stupid.
Anyway,
so,
where were we?
Right. So that is the proportion of EV sales and why subsidies are important.
Correct.
And why does it really cost the government that much to give the subsidies?
Today.
Yep. Now, the other thing that we're talking about in terms of subsidies, can I have my notes back? So another thing we should talk about is the PM e-drive scheme. But before that, I found my notes, and the percentage of EV in the overall vehicle sales is 6.38%. So I said 6 to 7%. I was right, 6.38%. So anyway, PM e-drive scheme. Now this offers a subsidy of 10,900 crores over 2 years, focused on charging infrastructure and promoting EVs through demand incentives. And amongst the biggest beneficiaries are public transport buses, 14,000 plus e-buses, 2 and 3-wheelers, which is 2.48 million. That's the 2-wheeler EV space, and 3 lakh 3-wheelers. And also e-trucks, and that is to the extent of 500 crores. So overall, this is great because see, electric buses I think is superb. I ride a scooter in Pune because of the traffic, and idling behind an electric bus is 2 million times better than behind a diesel bus.
True.
You know, even the rickshaws in Pune, half of them are spewing out white smoke, and that's because they're putting kerosene in them. Those which are not running on CNG or those which have got busted gaskets and all that, and they run it like that. That is what's killing us. Okay? Not the new petrol engines, not the new diesel engines, definitely not the hybrids. So electric public transport is excellent.
Absolutely. Fully agreed.
So that I think is a great way to go. They're also talking about electric ambulances. It's great. And our government is looking at what the need of the hour is and giving subsidies accordingly. Maybe two-wheelers don't need any subsidies anymore. The FAME 2 subsidies, once that was removed, there was a huge decline in electric two-wheeler sales. Now it's all come back up. Some manufacturers have gone almost bust because they have to pay back the incentives that they already took. But the others are doing good business. The Ola IPO, did you subscribe to it? Neither did I, but on hindsight, we should have.
No, I long term, I don't know. It's not investment advice.
Maybe like other podcasts, we should say that this show is for entertainment purposes. Absolutely. And it is not buying advice.
It is 100% for entertainment purposes.
So don't buy shares by watching our podcast. Yeah. But on hindsight, I should have bought the shares and then knocked it off when it opened.
You spoke to Karan in our office today, who did a software update on his Ola, had everything locked, and now he can't access his scooter. It took them 6 days to pick it up from service.
And yesterday in the Mint, there was a story of somewhat 80,000 complaints for EVs, for Ola.
They probably all did this update and had their scooters locked out.
Man, but that is ridiculous.
And it's crazy because what happens is to unlock the handlebar, it's all in the screen.
Yes.
And the screen wouldn't turn on. So he couldn't even unlock the handlebar and, kick push it to anywhere. So
the whole point of buying an electric whatever car or scooter or anything is that there's no maintenance. That's supposed to be like the big draw. That zero maintenance, no oil change, no drama. But if your damn thing doesn't start, if you can't access it, if you can't even unlock the handlebar,
I mean,
it's basically a brick. You got a really nice paperweight.
So Ola shares. You can buy them.
No, I said buy it at IPO price and then knock it off when it opens. But anyway, this is not. If we were that smart, we would.
We'd have bought Tata Motor shares in early days.
The share that I should have bought is Eicher shares.
When
I was testing those Royal Enfields, but I was testing those Royal Enfields. And I loved them to bits, and they kept breaking down. And I just could not imagine how this company is going to survive. But if I had bought 50,000 Eicher shares, 50,000 worth of Eicher shares when I was 21 and started working, today at 46, man, I would be having Ferraris in my garage. And so, but again, Eicher Royal Enfield is also working on an electric motorcycle, the Himi. Now, that should be coming out sometime now. And talking about electric motorcycles, Ultraviolette, just today, they unveiled the F99.
Oof, that thing looks so cool.
More than the coolness of that, I must give it to the gumption of the co-founders.
Yeah.
They've gone at Rajiv Bajaj.
Yeah.
Rajiv Bajaj is, he's not a guy you want to go up against.
Yeah.
These young guys have gone up, given him an open challenge that come and race my motorcycle at Ambi at the drag races. They've thrown down the gauntlet to all the Indian manufacturers. They've put out statements. Now, I've got it over here. They put out statements that really call out those manufacturers. They've said, and this is, I'm quoting Narayan Subramaniam, the CEO. He says that for long, we've looked to the east and west and used, in quotes, value engineering as a means to deflect the onus of truly making world-class products in India. Mic drop. Then Neeraj, he said that, now where is that? Whilst known for contract manufacturing, we believe that the time is ripe for India to take its rightful place in the pecking order of design-led, desirable auto brands in the world. I think these statements are a little too strong because
you look at
it is not really true. You look at Royal Enfield.
Royal Enfield,
Bajaj is all over the world.
Yeah.
You go to Egypt, you'll see Bajajas. You go to Iran, you'll see Bajajas. You go to Africa, you'll see Bajajas. TVS, okay? But obviously, they will not call out TVS because TVS Motor Company is an investor in Ultraviolette. So they also have to know which side the bread is being buttered on. Yeah. But I love the fact that they've thrown down the gauntlet and they're going for 2 records. The highest top speed by an Indian motorcycle and the fastest quarter mile time by an Indian motorcycle. We assumed it would be the Aprilia RS457 or the RR310. But they've said, no, it's the Apache race bike.
Okay.
So they're going for that some 216 or something.
They're going all the way there.
Yeah, they're going all the way there.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, so...
And EVs tend to lose out of steam at the
upper
top.
End.
So let's see.
Well, good show. Yeah. The bike looks really cool.
It looks so cool.
And I think, statements like this, we started off with the Windsor's BaaS system, the battery as a service. Like a disruptor kind of thing.
This is also
now,
disruptive.
These guys, they want to disrupt. How do you disrupt? By making strong statements, strong noise, using the media as a free marketing and publicity tool.
It's very smart. You have to give it to them.
It's smart. They make cool looking motorcycles. They make these statements that obviously we'll all pick up on because this is what are they saying?
To be fair, that's the kind of buyer they're trying to appeal to. Look at their bikes. They're brash. They're loud. They're not they're not a TVS iQ where somebody who's looking for practicality.
Yep.
They want somebody who's going to go out there and take up the challenge of owning these bikes, So
let's see what final numbers they post at the Valley Run, at the drag race. We'll be there watching it. We'll have more info on it as and when it happens. I think, that's all the confusion we can add to the pudding of electric vehicles in India. If you have any more questions.
I'm going to end this podcast by saying, going back to our problem statement, what is the problem with EVs? And why don't you tell us? You guys are out there. You guys are buying cars and bikes. Why don't you tell us what you think the problem with EVs is and whether there are solutions to those problems out there? So let's have a conversation in the comment section. I think this conversation has huge potential. It's going to be really interesting. So have at it. If you're watching on Spotify, this video will also be, if you're listening on Spotify, this video is going to be on YouTube as well. And we're going to have a very active comment section over there. So join in the conversation.
And thank you for watching. Thank you for spending your time to listen to
two geniuses rant about EVs.
I'm using an e-tron, a Q8 e-tron. Before this, I was using the EQE.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. But I will not wake up on a Sunday morning to go for a drive in those cars.
Yeah.
Now with the extra range that you get, now with the Q8 e-tron, you can drive from Pune to Mumbai, do some running around in Mumbai, come back on the same charge.
Yeah.
Okay, so practicality is there, silence is there, performance is there. You get everything. Now, if you were to buy it after 3 years, what's the value? Obviously, Audi will guarantee that. If you're buying a second-hand car, then no idea. But overall, you decide for yourself.
Yes. And
what
if there
you
are
need
any
an EV
EV
for.
owners out there, why don't you all also join in the conversation?
And tell us about your experiences.
Yeah, for sure. That's the most important thing.
Yep. And with that, note, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another podcast on what topic you can please suggest. I think we'll keep EVs on the down low for a while, but obviously the comments will be on fire. Thank you guys for listening and watching.